would like to introduce our first speaker. So the first talk of the day is Why Companies Should Share Their Data More and Not Less by Justin Strahovski from Unearth, the Managing Director. So Justin is a leader in technology innovation in the industrial sector. His writing on the topic has been published by the Australian Financial Review and the Journal of the Australian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy. Through Unearthed, Justin assists both corporations and innovators alike to benefit from the trillion-dollar change coming to industry from digital technologies. He has helped his industry partners to solve technical challenges, develop digital capability, and identify disruptive threats and opportunities. He has helped innovators to grow new ventures, access first customers, and create novel technology solutions. His work with Unearthed has been recognised with the South Australian Premier's Award, the Met's Ignited Collaboration Award, and the Queensland Mining Award. Justin previously worked in Silicon Valley for both a large network computing company and one of the first companies commercializing AI. Welcome, Justin.
Morning. Thank you, Holly. Real pleasure to be here today to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. I would like to say that that's data. That's going to be the topic of my presentation, but I think that you'll find that the undercurrent is all about people. So I'm grateful for the welcome, because that struck a chord with me and reminded me to share humbly with you some stories today, and at the heart of those stories is people. So let's get stuck in. 86,594. That's a big number. It is the number of open positions for data scientists in the US and Australia alone at the moment. Those are unfilled roles. That's quite a demand. And in fact, on the way over today, I saw something from Ray Dalio's Bridgewater. His analysts just published some research about the impact of the money printing that we're currently seeing on demand for everything, commodities included, and what that's doing to labor markets around the world. I encourage you to check that out. There's some fantastic charts if you like charts. Essentially, the bottom line there for labor is that the crunch that we're seeing in roles is going to continue for the near term. That means it's hard to find the people that we need to do the work to keep the economy going, to produce all of the things that we need, including energy and materials to run the economy and to deliver food into the bellies of our children and ourselves. That is a through line, I think, probably through many of the presentations today, which is about how do we navigate the changing conditions of our world. This is one of those changing conditions. A large number of open roles in data science going unfilled. Here's another, 4.5 million. Nearly 5 million people have taken a course in machine learning from Andrew Ng at Stanford University. Andrew's one of the best in the business. And Stanford's one of the premier institutions around the world. These people are learning to do machine learning for free on the internet. So what's going on here? We have 86,000 open roles just in data science, right? This is not counting machine learning engineers, and we've got nearly 5 million people developing those skills for free on the internet. Does that sound familiar? There's something unresolved about the difference between those two numbers, right? How come if all of those people are learning those skills, those roles go unfilled? This is what I think that's about. Anybody heard of the creator economy? The passion economy? The Great Resignation, I think, was one of the most attention-grabbing of recent headlines that had to do with this theme. What's going on? Well, I hope that that's something that we can explore, and if I can, I'd like to shed some light on how that's affecting our industry. But why should you listen to me about any of that? Holly gave quite a lengthy introduction. Thank you for that. I think the relevant bits are, with my colleagues in Unearthed, we hold 3 different patents over applications of machine learning to industrial problems. In the last 7 years, we've helped more than 50 companies, 50 different technology companies, bring their solutions to the resources sector. I run a group called the Industrial Data Science Leaders Roundtable. It's an international group of leaders who are trying to apply machine learning to industry. And recently, we've helped our industry partners solve 25 different opportunities through the application of machine learning. But I want to start with a story of personal difficulty. In our business in 2019, we were on a mission to connect people with digital skills to opportunities in the sector. We did that by flying around the world and running hackathon events. Anybody been to a hackathon event? Awesome. They're good fun. We really enjoyed doing that. What happens is you smash a lot of really talented people together in the same room, you give them some cool problems, and you see what comes out at the back of the weekend. That involved us traveling to places like South America, South Africa, all across the US and Canada and Australia. And in doing so, we built a fantastic community of innovators. You can see some of the happy faces up here. I told you there was going to be stuff about people. This is something that I'm particularly proud about. We really lit people up with the ability to apply their digital skills to opportunities in the sector. But in doing so, we kind of got tired. It takes a lot to fly around the world. It takes a lot to put on events like this. So to the event organizers, I want you to know you're appreciated. Organizing venues and catering every time you host an event is actually quite a lot of logistics, getting people into the room, making sure things go smoothly, and that was taking its toll on us. And furthermore, we realized that it was unsustainable. It was unsustainable for the people in the business, and also it didn't allow us the ability to break through a particular plateau in our business. We couldn't achieve the scale of impact that we wanted and change the lives of the number of people we wanted to reach in that approach. And so we ourselves, in 2019, started thinking about how to apply what we were seeing from the beginnings of that creator economy, the beginnings of that distribution of digital skills, to our business. How could we turn that challenge of the limitation on our ability to grow, but the opportunity of people having digital skills around the world into something new for our business? What would it look like if we took the entire thing online and took advantage of that digital distribution of skills, such as Andrew Ng teaching people machine learning around the world? This is what it looks like. Since doing that, our community, that is the number of people with machine learning skills joining the Unearthed community, has doubled year on year every year since doing that and continues to grow. So figuring out how to leverage that global distribution of digital skills is transformation for our business. And today I want to explore how might you take advantage of that distribution of skills? What does it mean for industry that there are people out there who are learning to do machine learning for free? They are pursuing opportunities to do the work that they want to do when they want it from where they want it, and that's not going to change. We've got tons of unfilled roles in data science, right? Anybody tried to hire a data scientist recently? It's difficult at the moment. Because of this, right? That great resignation, that distribution of digital skills is affecting all of our businesses and will continue to do so. How do we turn that to our advantage? Well, I'm going to try to convince you that the first step is sharing your data more. If we're here to talk about machine learning in industry, that starts with data, doesn't it? And my contention is that sharing your data is the first and single most important step in the journey to being able to leverage that global distribution of skills. So I'm going to give you 5 reasons to share your data more. I know that each of you in your organizations have very talented people who have serious responsibilities for data security, for IP, and the like, and they're going to have lots of questions, and hopefully these 5 reasons will start to arm you with enough important considerations to start a conversation in the business about why you should consider sharing your data externally. So reason number 1, you should share your data more. It's important that you stop undervaluing your data as an asset. It seems like it's common to talk about data as an asset, and you might think that people overvalue their data. In some cases, that's true, but we see plenty of examples of people undervaluing their data. One, recently with Western Power. Western Power was interested in improving their safety performance. They wanted to stop people being exposed to the potential of being involved in an incident. And they had done very well using their incident management database and the data in there as an indicator of where to put their efforts. And those efforts had paid off. But like Unearthed in 2019, they had reached a plateau in their ability to continue to improve their safety performance. And they figured that the data in their incident management database was no longer of much value because they had already mined that source for insights about where to apply their efforts. In conversation, however, we understood that they had other sources of data, such as a vast amount of data in their HR system about where and when people are working shifts. How long are people working? How many days in a row? During what hours? We also suspected that perhaps in combination with a model of human circadian rhythms, that these two other data sources might be useful. So we combined those things and we invited data scientists from around the world to come up with new approaches to predicting the likelihood that somebody would be involved in an incident. The outcome were a number of different approaches that Western Power is now using to think about how to do rostering differently. They had some novel insights about when people are more likely to be involved in incidents, and they had some of their suspicions confirmed. They also had some things come up that were completely new to them, because we asked people not only to build machine learning models to predict likelihood, but also to explain the critical factors that were involved in making those models. So Western Power is now looking at those to figure out how they can continue to improve their safety performance. And doing so only happened because they were willing to share their data externally and to stop undervaluing data that was in different silos in their organization, right? Thinking differently about the data in their business. It was no easy feat, for sure. There were different stakeholders that were responsible for those different data assets. Each of them had to be convinced that there was potential for value in sharing that data, and they had to go through quite a lengthy process of releasing that data to the public. Which leads us to the number 2 reason that you should share your data more. It might seem completely counterintuitive, but I'm here to tell you that I think that sharing your data more is the best way to actually improve your data security practices. How could sharing your data externally make your organization more secure with respect to data? Well, how else do you stress test the very control systems that you put in place for protecting your data? You have to go through the motions of sharing it with others to even build that muscle in your organization. So that the muscles for doing things like exporting data, thinking about which data is sensitive and which data is not, figuring out how to do things like obfuscating data or removing identification from data. Those are things that you can get better at with practice, and the reason to practice is to share your data externally. Western Power did that in this safety challenge. So we had to combine the 2 disparate data sets from those different silos into one data set to share them externally. And in the process, we had to think about which bits of that data are not critical to solving the problem that we can remove. Can we remove all the identifying information? Do we need to do any obfuscation? What conditions have to be satisfied in order for Western Power to share that with people all over the world? That practice has left Western Power with a new muscle for getting better at looking after data security, a practical one, right? It developed a practical approach to treating data as an asset and looking after data security. So sharing your data is the best way to build new muscles for data security in your organizations. The third reason that you should share your data externally more is to attract top talent. Newcrest was interested in predicting density of tailings underflow in advance to reduce the use of water in their operations. And we got hundreds of our community involved in building the best machine learning models for doing just that. The outcome was many different models that were successful at doing that and an ability to predict tailings underflow more than 3 hours in advance. And that's enabled Newcrest to make a significant contribution to the bottom line of their organization, but also to save many gigaliters of water in the process. So a net environmental benefit as well. But critically, in doing so, they were able to assess the skills of people that participated in this competition in very real ways, right? Those people were applying machine learning skills, developed perhaps on the internet from wherever they were. They were applying those skills to a real industrial problem. It's actually quite a challenge if you're building data science skills on the internet to get useful data. People are tired of cat photos. And the data skills that you build on publicly available cat photo data sets don't necessarily apply to industrial problems. So sharing your data externally gives you an opportunity to assess skills in practice. For Newcrest, it meant seeing how hundreds of people performed at building models for predicting tailings underflow density. And after this engagement, they hired 2 of the top teams to continue development of some of those solutions in practice. So for Newcrest and others, sharing your data externally gives you a way to attract top talent to your organization and to hopefully fill some of those unfilled data science roles. Number 4, in the top reasons you should share your data, you should do so to stand out from the crowd. The mining industry in particular at the moment faces some challenges with respect to its reputation. What do we stand for? What's our role in the energy transition? What impact are we going to make on the environment? How are we going to continue to produce the critical minerals that the industry needs, the material that we all need to keep the economy going? What does that mean for your brands and your ability to attract talent? How are you going to stand out from other mining companies, from other industries with whom you're in competition for top talent? Oz Minerals was interested in doing that. They engaged us to run a global competition to try to figure out how they might use their data to come up with novel ways of exploring for minerals. Oz Minerals shared over 2 terabytes of their proprietary exploration data. All of the exploration data they had, they made publicly available. That attracted more than 1,000 people from around the world to do work on that data. In doing so, Oz Minerals drew a line in the sand and said, we're going to be a modern mining company, and that means using our data differently to do exploration. And the world, at least the mining press, took notice of that, and that succeeded in helping Oz to distinguish itself as a modern mining company, and one that puts its data to use in finding new ways to explore for minerals. That was all because they were willing to share their data. Now, they thought practically about that. They owned the tenement for which the data mattered, so they understood that they had the only rights to do anything with any of the insights on the back of that data, so they assessed the practical risk of sharing that data as fairly low. But this did build a muscle for Oz as well, which has enabled them to establish that brand as a modern mining company. All right, number 5 in the top 5 reasons you should share your data more. That is to leverage Joy's Law. Anybody know what Joy's Law is? Anybody heard of Bill Joy? No, that's the look I usually get. I know I'm still trying to promote. This is ancient history. In my career, one of the first roles I had was at a company called Sun Microsystems. Sun Microsystems was building network computers before the network was fashionable. They were probably a bit ahead of their time with those devices, fantastic machines. And that company, one of the company founders was a guy called Bill Joy. And Bill was famous for saying that it doesn't matter the size of your company, most of the world's smartest people are outside of it. He wasn't talking about the competitive landscape, he was talking about the solution. For all of your organizations, this is true. I don't care how many smart people you have in your business, most of the world's smart people are outside of it. None of our companies employ 4.5 million people, and there are 4.5 million people who have learned to do machine learning. So the challenge for us in resolving that paradox of those open data science roles And that large number of people learning machine learning skills is to figure out how to put Joy's law into practice. How do we leverage Joy's law to resolve that paradox? We had the pleasure of working with CBH to try to do that. CBH is a company that deals in a bulk commodity, not unlike some bulk commodities in the mining sector, but theirs is grain. And they wanted to automate the process of rating the shipments of grain. So what happens now is a human being takes a sample of that grain and visually inspects it for things like mold, other defects, and then gives a quality rating to the shipment on the basis of that sample. That involves lots of human time and effort that could be spent elsewhere, and it often exposes people to risk, so they were interested in seeing whether machine learning might help with that. We looked at thousands of different images, and we engaged more than 265 data scientists from 42 countries around the world in a competition to build the best machine learning model for automating that process. In the process, CBH saw more than 600 different machine learning models developed. You can see those numbers there under the heading attempts. Those are the different variations of machine learning models produced by each of those teams. Look at the amount of work that represents. Look at the number of flags there. That's, to our best approximation, where those teams came from. This is how you leverage Joy's law. This is how you resolve that paradox of unfilled data science roles and yet this incredible abundance globally of people with machine learning skills. And these are the faces of some of the people that participated in that competition. This is just indicative of some of the who are the people involved who are learning these skills and now applying them to mining and other industrial challenges. When he's not classifying images of grain, Radek is using his machine learning skills to try to translate whale song. In the very near future, because of efforts of people in this globally distributed network of machine learning skills, we may be able to understand what whales are saying to each other. How crazy is that? Predicting machine failure should be easy next to that. Shravan does drug discovery at Novartis with his machine learning skills, where he's a senior data scientist, and Ramdan leads AI projects at Chevron. So these are just some of the type of people who are part of that network. They may have day jobs, but they like doing this kind of work, and they are representative of what that distribution of digital skills internationally looks like. And they're also evidence that if you share your data, you can take advantage of that to resolve that particular paradox, to leverage Joy's law. So we've seen from several companies in mining and in adjacent industries how sharing their data has enabled them to attract top talent, build new data security muscles, and leverage Joy's law to build a resilient organization that taps into the potential of this creator economy, the great resignation, all of those things, and turn that to their advantage. And I hope over the course of the next couple of days, we can think about how sharing data, how machine learning can help us to build a more sustainable and engaging industry that has at its heart not just data, but people. Thank you very much. I think we do have time for questions, so let's see. How much data cleansing does Unearth do to make the data ready for machine learning in these hackathons and online engagements? Is it expected that the participants do it? That's a great question, and it really depends on the kinds of data sets that we see. So part of sharing your data involves getting data ready for others to see it. You saw with that case study from Western Power that doing so involves things like removing identifying information. Perhaps there are corrupted cells, things like that. There is quite a bit of work, obviously, that goes into data preparation, and there are a number of ways to do that. We can do that, but we can also turn to a community of people with more expert skills in doing that to get that done. I would say that almost every engagement that we've seen with an industry partner requires quite a bit of data prep to get the data into a shape where it can be leveraged effectively. But I think that that's one of the, it should be not perceived as a friction to getting value from sharing your data, but just one in a series of steps in a workflow of data that just gets better over time as you build your machine learning muscles inside an organization. There's another question here. Do you have any advice for people trying to convince their organizations to be more open with data? Well, I hope that that's what those top 5 reasons do. I know that it's a challenge, but I think it is worthwhile having a real discussion internally about what the risks are of sharing that data, and not trying to brush them under the rug, but trying to be practical about where you are exposed to risk and what means you have of controlling that risk. I would hazard a guess that almost all of our organizations are sharing data in some form, and that we have some established controls, whether they are contractual or otherwise, for sharing that data. And that's just going to increase. I don't see a world in which we stop sharing data at all. And so we just have to build the muscles to do that effectively. And I think it starts with a practical assessment of risk, right? For Oz Minerals, that meant thinking deeply about whether it actually mattered that anybody anywhere in the world had access to their exploration data if, in fact, they owned the rights to exploit any of the insights there. Often, a practical step might mean using a previous year's data to build a fantastic model. So you can use previous year's data externally, because you might assess the risk of sharing that data as less than sharing your current year's data, and then retrain the resulting model internally on current data. So that's just another example of a practical step you might have. What challenges do you see relying on a decentralized AI workforce? That's a good question. I think that this is a challenge not just for relying on a decentralized AI and data science workforce, but for any of the roles that we have that are becoming distributed. And I suppose I'll take an extreme position here. I think that the reason that people don't figure out how to do this more is that we are used to hiring for having bums on seats, and that has to change. There are some roles for which it makes sense to have bums on seats because you have uncertainty. If you have uncertainty about the future of your business and you don't know where you are going, it makes sense to have some dedicated resources to work through that uncertainty and be there to guide an organization through that and into value. But where you know what a role involves, that is, if you have a mature approach to identifying the steps that it takes to do any particular role in your organization, then you should be able to chunk that work, and you shouldn't be trying to get a bum on a seat. You should be thinking about the different ways to leverage a distributed workforce. That's happening not just in our industry, but in all industries, and not just for data science work, but for all kinds of work. Where we can chunk that work in a workflow into discrete steps and assess the output of those steps objectively, that makes good sense for being able to distribute it. And we no longer need to think about hiring in the same way. I think that there'll probably be lots of discussion about that when it comes to things like navigating the future of work that we're in. I see that there's a last question about how we challenge the perceptions of risk around sharing data, but I think that was probably quite similar to a previous question, and I'll consider it answered. Are there any last questions? Awesome. Thank you very much. Look forward to continuing the conversation over the next couple of days.